Okay. Well, welcome everybody as people are starting to tune in. I am very pleased to have you all here with us today, dialing in either on LinkedIn or YouTube, or perhaps you're watching the replay. I am Liana Fricker, founder and inspiring chief at Inspiration Space, and today I am here opening up the IS Salon to two wonderful friends, collaborators, fellow founders, who peer mentor each other. We support each other, Sanya Rajpal and Maisie Nichols, for a conversation around resilience reimagined. It's Global Entrepreneurship Week, and a key theme here is around mental health and resilience. I often say that entrepreneurship can feel like a lifestyle choice. And having recently come through my own burnout, I really want to challenge the idea that it should be uncomfortable, it should be hard, it should be painful. That if you're not grinding, you don't want it enough. If you're not working all the hours of the day, you're lazy. If you quit your full time job to, you know, if you don't quit your full-time job to go into your side hustle, you're not serious. Because this is what I found in my own experience leads to burnout, overwhelm, stress, and ultimately, uh, you know, the end of your business. A healthy founder, a healthy business needs space, it needs time, and it needs to recuperate in the same way you would if you are an athlete. And it goes beyond, a Calm app. And what I love about what Maisie and Sonia are building both together and separately is this idea of taking, medical expertise and trauma informed therapies and bridging them together with emerging technology. So Maisie is a founder in training and EMDR therapist, and I'm going to invite her to share exactly what that means. And Sanya is co-founder and CEO of Adagio VR. So welcome both of you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank
So I
you.
want to start before we dive into what EMDR even is, or maybe that's how we'll pull this red thread. If you share your entrepreneurial story. So, Maisie, how did you get into entrepreneurship, and what does EMDR have to do with that?
Okay. Can you hear me okay? My screen's gone blank, so I can't see anything. Um, but I can hear you. So can you hear me okay?
And we can see you as well.
Oh, you can. Fine. Like I can't see anyone else, but you can see me, so that's all good. um, yes. So EMDR, it stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, and it is kind of the gold standard therapy for PTSD and trauma-related struggles and difficulties. So it's recommended by the World Health Organization, and it's also recommended by the NHS as one of the best treatments for trauma. So that's a little bit about what it is. So I came into becoming an EMDR therapist. I did 8 years as a social worker. I did child protection, and then I did 2 years as a perinatal mental health social worker, so working in a mental health team with people during pregnancy and for that first year after birth as well. And I ended up getting burnt out as a social worker. It happened a couple of times, and that's why I changed from children's into adult social work. And after it happened the second time, I was kind of like, I can't do this job anymore. Like it's too emotionally draining. So that was when I like pivoted a little bit and retrained as an EMDR therapist, and I've been doing like private one-to-one therapy since that point. I work for the NHS as well through their IAPT service, and I'm also kind of gone back into the social work area and arena as well, and helping social workers with secondary trauma and vicarious trauma within the workplace. So those are like the few different things that I'm doing at the moment.
And Sonia, you've got, like Maisie, a long portfolio career. How did you end up from law into VR?
I know they really don't make sense in the same sentence. Um, I think for me, the broader context is I really don't like when things are broken. And I thought I could be okay with learning how to win within a broken game, but I realized that I'd rather just create a better one. So entrepreneurship became the solution, the sustainable solution to doing that. So I really take business as an opportunity to solve problems and solve problems in a way that has a wider and more continued impact than sort of other models. That's what I'd like business to be. That's what I'd like entrepreneurship to be. And I think the job of an entrepreneur is to figure out how to do that in a way that also is, financially successful and has all the right signals to get as many partners on board and do all the other things that you have to do to run a business and build a culture and build teams and all that stuff, which is an interesting and fun and difficult but worthwhile journey. Yeah, I think that's probably the most succinct way I can say it. But how I came to VR specifically is having been an activist and then done a bunch of entrepreneurship stuff, a bunch of international development stuff. Burnout was a very normal thing. I saw so many of my peers give up or compromise along the way, and I've also had those moments, but always wanted to continue despite those feelings or concerns that I had. And institutional barriers are really hard to deal with, and doing it continuously does burn you out. But to expect it is one thing, but to accept it is a completely another. And I think kind of coming across this sort of trauma lens to mental health, but also to behavior and performance was really revolutionary to me. I mean, it helped that it was my co-founder who sort of made me realize that. And I've had my aha moments along the way. But it made me realize that actually, if you take time to rest, and more than rest, get relief from the weight that you're carrying, you can actually have a little bit more lightness and freedom and choice and that spark of wanting to do something more just because why not, than you would otherwise. And I really like that, and I want to protect it. I want to protect it in me, and I want to help protect it in others, because I want to live in a better world. So, and I'd like as many people as possible to be part of that process. So yeah, that's kind of what brought me to AdagioVR. What I'm really excited about is how we can bring the science and technology together, and then use the operational models and systems that business provides to really create a scalable solution that is able to tangibly generate and provide value. So that's what I love.
Yes, amen to that. I often say entrepreneurship is the best way to, create the world that you want to see. I'm reading this book of our book of the month is Hustle and Float by Rahaf Harfouche, and it really takes us through the history of, work, how we ended up in the way that we have when it comes to this idea that you must work longer, harder, faster, and the tension that creates in a world where, it's a knowledge economy. And if anything, I'd say it's a creative economy. And when the book was written, it was before Chat GPT, even though the book is not old. And when we think about the role that humanity has to play in both innovation and preservation, having people burn out is less than optimum. So I just want to touch on your experiences as founders. What did you find just unexpectedly challenging that you weren't prepared for?
Shall I go?
Jump
Sorry,
in,
can you hear
Maisie.
me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
jump in, Maisie.
I think I found the whole thing challenging from the start, and I started the catalyst for me wanting to start my own business and get into entrepreneurship was when I had my first daughter, because I was working in social work. I really didn't want to go back into that role after my maternity leave. I wanted to figure out a way to have more freedom, to spend more time with my children. So that was kind of one of the key motivators for thinking about another option and another way. So I actually started a secondhand children's clothes business. That was a consignment type thing, and that was my first foray into setting something up for myself. And I can just remember it was so anxiety provoking, extremely stressful. I worried so much about what other people thought about me. Really struggled with putting myself out there and being confident in what I was doing. And I think a lot of that came from some of the previous experiences that I've had, during my childhood, growing up. I've experienced some traumatic incidents and events myself. So that was kind of really apparent to me how those difficult past experiences were playing out in my day-to-day life and preventing me from like being able to achieve the things that I wanted to achieve and go and do the things that I wanted to do in the world. So yeah, that was like my initial struggle, and like, I've figured out ways to manage it, but it comes back still from time to time as well.
I love that, and I did not know that you had that business before. I mean, we've been working together for a year, and that's like one of my favorite business ideas as a side. In a world where we've got enough, I'm telling you, and kids grow out of everything so quickly. Like, this is, if you're watching this, please make this. We need lots of these. And so, and we often kind of forget that we come to entrepreneurship with a whole wealth of experience, you know, and so we can rely on those things, or they can sabotage us if we don't address them. And it's very interesting to me how you've realized that it was actually past experiences and things, even like from childhood, that were impacting how you were showing up as an entrepreneur. And we
Yeah.
don't think about that often. What about you, Sanya?
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? Because when you're a founder and you're building something from scratch, there is no institution that has predates you being involved, and there's no institution that predates someone's opinion about what you're doing. And both of those things are really hard. Like, you have to build the institution, which means you have to build the systems and the operational processes and the culture and the like habits of yourself and others, and like what happens on a day-to-day basis. I think for me that's really hard. Like, I have ADHD. Being able to hold my attention to build operational systems is probably the thing that I've had to work the most on. And I've kind of vowed that I want to get as good as possible at it, but I'm not. It's not my natural tendency. I mean, these days, like, a couple of my friends are like, "Oh, it's systems girl," and I'm like, "That's so funny. That's not who I am, like, at all." But that's the really cool stuff, right? Like, you end up embodying these things that you think are your weaknesses, but actually you have to really bring that like passion of innovation even to yourself and your skills. And I think in terms of challenges, this kind of points out what is the biggest challenge, I think, with entrepreneurship is that it's an exercise of facing yourself every day. It's facing your best and the worst and your limitations and your potential, and not in a vacuum, when you're also surrounded by other people and their opinions of how things are done and how they think should be done and how things might protect you or what they judge of you. And it's really hard to navigate becoming the person you need to be to build your business to the level that it's possible, and to know what feedback is viable and relevant and important, especially when you're underserved, like underrepresented founder, frankly. Like, you get a lot of advice that isn't like is based on how things are done. Now, I think the thing that was very useful to figure out as a founder is that, like, if I was okay with how things are done, I wouldn't be a founder. Like, if I was running on statistics, I shouldn't be a founder. Like, we live in the small edge niche potential, something different. But to kind of embody that version of myself every day requires a massive amount of like self-belief and conviction and awareness, and just it's so easy to slip back into just compromising or like being like, oh, today I don't feel like being this person, I can't be that person. And that push and pull, I think, is really hard. And it weighs on you without you even noticing. Sometimes you kind of suddenly just hear yourself say something like in your inner monologue of like, oh, this would just be so much easier, or like, you know what, maybe this is just how things are, and you have to catch yourself. But it's really hard. And I think you bring your own life's worth of story to the table as a founder, and then you're given everyone else's to deal with. And like, trying to not get crushed in between those two things is like part of the game.
100%. In particular, if you're really driven by passion and a desire to change what is broken. And Maisie, I know you'll be able to speak to this, but when I was coming out of my burnout, I was doing research, and this is also included in Hustle and Float, where, as human beings, we want to be accepted. We don't want to be rejected. And it creates a physiological response, right? It shows up on
Yeah.
MRIs like a punch in the face, which, if you're all, even the most confident person can feel worried about rejection. You really have to build up that mental fitness so that you reprogram the stories that you tell to yourself. Maisie, can you speak to that, with your medical expertise hat on and your trauma informed therapy hat on?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think like following on from what Sanya was saying, I was having a conversation with someone about this yesterday, actually, and I don't know if this answers the question or if I'm going off on a different tangent, but it's about that that inner belief, isn't it? Having that inner self-belief so that then those external, like all of those external things don't matter as much, because you're like, okay, well, I know what I'm doing. I feel confident in myself, and I can continue to do this, on this journey that I'm on, without needing to worry so much about what other people think. But you're right. I think no matter how much you develop that like inner belief, confidence, resilience, whatever it is that you want to call it, we still care about what other people think, and we want to be a part of the crowd, or we want to be a part of a crowd. So I think as well, some of it is about figuring out who your people are, and gravitating towards them. I don't know if I've lost my tangent of like kind of medical EMDR type thoughts on that though. So I'll go back to you, Liana. I don't know.
Well, yeah. But if we bring it around to that, right? So if I come to you and I say, I want EMDR to help me get over these self-limiting beliefs. A, does it do that?
Yes.
And B, how does it work to do that? Because from what my understanding, this is for like deep, deep trauma. Entrepreneurship, I feel like is it really that traumatic? Talk to me about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that this was one of the things that I identified as I was doing the training, because the EMDR community is very much focused on PTSD. Like that's where all of the evidence is, that's what all of the research has been focused. So like the NHS are using it for PTSD. It's really effective, and it's really fast actually in comparison to a lot of other therapies. So that's where the conversation tends to go when people are thinking about EMDR. But you can apply it in different areas, and it doesn't always necessarily have to be about a PTSD type event that would meet the threshold and the criteria for a PTSD diagnosis. Like trauma can show up in our lives in so many different ways. It can show up from like childhood experiences, like bullying in the workplace, a difficult experience with a boss, like relationships, having a business that's failed, like financial trauma, like having financial difficulties. There are so many different ways that trauma can show up. And then there are also ways where, like, we're talking about confidence, mindset, fear of public speaking, all of those kind of things, like the mindset gremlin type things that we all get from time to time. And I imagine everybody's got something that they feel is a weakness or something that holds them back. And what EMDR can do is kind of take a little bit of a step on from mindset work that you'll be doing. Like a lot of coaching kind of is focusing on the mindset aspect of things, and it gets to a bit of a deeper level underneath that. So it's looking more at like how your brain is wired, changing those patterns, changing the patterns of belief about yourself, and also changing like the emotional response that you have when you're thinking about these things that you're struggling with. So it's really deep rewiring of how you experience the world and how you're able to then show up in the world in a different way.
So if you'd had a past experience, in sales that really left an indelible mark in your confidence, EMDR is a way to rewire that story that you're telling yourself so that even though, rejection happens, it will help you build up that resilience that you need to sell. Because ultimately, when you're a founder, you're the best salesperson. There's a lot of, talking heads out there that say you should be the only salesperson for a while because no one knows it like you. No one's as passionate as you. But if you're bringing, baggage effectively to the table, it's no wonder then why you might avoid marketing, why, you might find a whole lot of other things to do but marketing, why you might make bad hiring decisions, all of these things, maybe outsourcing too early, which can affect cash flow, or, you don't get the result you want because you couldn't be as clear and all that. So, okay, that makes a lot of sense how it, uncovers a block. And Sanya, now can you explain how the VR side fits into this side of, dealing with being an entrepreneur and your mental health?
Yeah. So I think Maisie touched on it really and explained really clearly that in the EMDR space, and I think probably in the clinical space overall, there's a massive focus on illness and post-crisis intervention. And how I think about it personally, I wouldn't necessarily say this in like a official medical context, but I don't think people really care until you're a problem to other people. Like until your trauma is inconvenient and expensive to someone else's life and to their business or to their like daily comfort, doesn't really matter, really. Like me not believing myself because I'm whatever for whatever reason, it's just contained in my own head. But when that becomes a problem at work or a problem in my personal life or how it impacts how I show up in my relationships or as a boss, then then things become a crisis, right? So this is the framework we currently live in, which is until it's a serious problem or you're a problem to someone else, deal with your own trauma. Like your problem not relevant, go away. And I think that's not necessarily the most efficient way to even deal with mental illness, really, because if we can deal with things earlier enough, then they don't become a crisis. It's just a matter of efficiency. But also, for a lot of us, it doesn't reach crisis point in an evident way. But how many women in their late 40s, early 50s onwards discover chronic diseases, chronic pain, metabolic issues, hormonal imbalances, emotional dysregulation, because they're carrying all of this stuff from birth for generations, in fact, right? There is underlying pain, emotional pain, which impacts and echoes through every aspect of our life and really shapes how we perceive and experience and behave on a day-to-day basis. And this is really, I mean, we didn't necessarily start off here like in such a clear way that this is what we wanted to work on. It really started with my co-founder, who is a psychiatrist, has unreasonably long waiting lists, but saw how effective EMDR was in his clinical practice. And yeah, the timeline of how quickly it impacts someone is compared to standard therapies is crazy. Like, and we wanted to create something that was more accessible, that didn't cost a bomb, didn't cost, years of waiting after crisis point. Maisie mentioned the waiting list. Now, even that wasn't enough, because now let's look at all the behavioral stuff that I already mentioned. So for us, our sort of journey, or the technology of the programming that we've been developing, has been about how do you take this really effective therapy and look at the base principles and the first principles of how it operates and how it kind of frames human experience and human behavior, and use that to recontextualize these techniques, add a bunch of other techniques to make it not just focus on trauma, not just focus on illness, and not just focus on the clinic. And to create something that allows people to cut through the noise in their own mind and actually provide meaningful relief as quickly and as accessibly as possible. The really cool thing with technology is then you can scale that. Even I'm not scalable. None of us are scalable. We have 24 hours in a day. We all have the same 24 hours. Even so does Beyonce, right? That's the joke. But what technology does, and what these additional resources do, is it allows to scale beyond that time. Rather than being a one-to-one, we can do a one-to-many. And we still like to keep the human touch with the technology, because it is necessary. This approach to mental health is very new. This approach to technology is very new. VR in itself is brand new to a lot of people. So we do have quite a high focus on high human touch, in addition to the technology delivery, especially at the beginning of someone's use for the first month to 3 months. And the intention there is to really embed it into their life and make it something that is the first thing they think of when they experience distress. Because inherently what we're asking people to do, if you take the EMDR framework and like these principles that are surround it, is you're asking somebody to take radical responsibility for their feelings and their behavior. Like that's at the heart of it, what it comes down to.
Yeah.
But not in a way that they're left alone, but in a way that gives them the tools to actually then shift those behaviors and experiences and emotions. And that's, what we hope the technology can do.
Yes, and that touches on, the idea of being a leader, because being a leader is around taking radical responsibility. You have to be empathetic. You've got to be incredibly self-aware whilst also having high emotional intelligence. You must have, you know, you look at yourself all the time, as, someone said. And so, Maisie, as a founder, I know, like, when we were working together, I was like, Maisie, I think we can do this on VR. And you're like, what are you talking about? I was like, I don't know. Let's just see. And then it happened, right?
Yeah.
Jump in. Why not? You know, and so, as a professional working in this space, what do you see in the future for, mental health interventions for high performers? What do you think is now possible?
Well, so I think with like what Sanya's created is that it becomes more accessible to to many people, and I think there's a bit of a stigma still associated with having talking therapy, one-to-one therapy. So I think combining technology with therapeutic approaches is going to make it more accessible, less stigmatizing, and more people are going to give it a try and see the positive benefits of it. So yeah, I think kind of that's my future prediction.
And how do you feel about it as someone outside of tech and doing that journey? Because that's a thing in and of itself. At Inspiration Space, we're all about that concept of disruptive innovation, putting two things that seemingly don't go together to see, like, what happens. So as someone who comes from outside of technology being sort of thrown into this, what would you
Mm.
say to, your peers that are delivering one-to-one treatments, around the role that technology can play in helping them be more resilient entrepreneurs, if only because it helps with scale?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's twofold, isn't it? It's like providing the resilience to the people that are delivering therapy one-to-one. So like, yeah, therapists, entrepreneurs, people that are like building new things. But I think that I think there's going to be a bit of resistance as well to this kind of thing. And like me and Sanya have discussed it previously about like how willing the therapeutic community are to allowing technology to take on some of the roles that that they're providing at the moment. So yeah, I think there's a bit of resistance, but I think once people realize that there are so many different ways that this kind of therapy and this kind of technology can be applied, that is not necessarily clinical, so it's not people even on NHS waiting lists, it's helping people to like access like the inner knowledge and the inner resilience that they have, so that they can do the things that they want to be doing in the world rather than being stuck and preventing them from whatever's preventing them from being able to do it. Like, it provides a tool, and like a really easily accessible tool for people to challenge those kind of difficulties as well.
Nice. And Sanya,
Yes.
on your end, what do you see as, the future of emerging technology, VR, AR, in being able to support people, in particular high performers, in like a workplace environment?
So for me, the opportunity that technology presents is, as I mentioned, is about scale. I think technology is a wonderful tool. The one thing I do want to say that caveats everything and anything that I ever say about technology is that I don't think it's a solution in itself. Like, building cool VR like experiences won't heal trauma. We have to integrate really high quality science and really high quality operational models and really high quality service delivery alongside it, which makes me a bit of a weird tech entrepreneur, but fine, that's fine. Because I think that's maybe the bit that's missing. Like, I actually want people to care about using my product. And that, I think, does to some extent still come through the human connection. Now, when it comes to the actual journey of using something like this, the really cool thing about EMDR is that you don't have to disclose or go into great detail about what you've been through or what you're actually experiencing. It's framed in a way that's relatively private compared to standard talk therapy, which in itself is extremely valuable when you're trying to get past the social or cultural barriers, or the time barriers really of individuals who wouldn't normally in a high performing space or in a workspace engage with therapeutic support. People don't have the time And telling someone your deep personal stuff when you're the boss or you are a leader, it's not just about it being stigmatized. You've trained yourself not to do it. And sort of saying, it's okay, just like, it's okay to have feelings. It's still very superficial when someone's like, I also have to pay people's salaries. I can't, there are very real competing interests in that are happening. And the kind of world we live in right now, trust in the workplace is at an all-time low. So we're playing within. That being said, the capacity of people to perform and deliver high quality outcomes for organizations, and I think it's also higher than ever because of technology. So we have to find a nice, healthy balance. And I think that's the opportunity here. And that's the one we're trying to build towards. And it's hard because it means that experts from different corners of this space have to talk to each other. And I often end up being the person who asks a lot of annoying questions of people and forcing them outside their comfort context of what they're doing. But we have to change how we imagine work. Because if we don't, technology is going to do it for us. Like AI's here. Like climate change is here. This massive macro changes that are happening and will continue to happen. We have to rethink. So either it's going to be a proactive change where we integrate integrate opportunity into how we adapt, or it's going to be not a very long-term happy situation. So
Yes. And on that note, as I start to bring us back around again for a close, I want to dial back into Maisie. Oh my God, I love that bit of jargon. I've never said that one before. Dial back in. I'm going to dial back in. But, right. I'm going to come back to Maisie because you're doing our brain gym pilot, and we've been going through 5 weeks now of mental fitness training, really rewiring our brain and finding new stories to tell ourselves. And I know in the group chat you mentioned, what was it, butterfly? Is it butterfly type? Do you want to talk to us about how, for anyone, it's like a key kind of practical takeaway when you feel the adrenaline rushing, when you're feeling nervous, the hands are sweaty, you're going into survival brain mode, just that quick, easy thing that you can do to just bring it back down.
Yes. So the butterfly tap is a really simple like EMDR tool that I use with all of my clients, and it's a way to self-soothe. We also use it as part of the processing part of the therapy as well, so it can start to process information and emotions at some point as well. So essentially what you do is you link your thumbs together and then you are tapping on your chest, so kind of like it looks like a butterfly. So you're tapping one hand after the other at a pace that feels kind of right and comfortable for you. And the idea behind the butterfly tap is it utilizes both hemispheres of the brain consecutively, and that allows us to start to think about things from a little bit of a different perspective. It's actually what happens when we're sleeping during REM sleep, where our brain is processing all the information during the day and filing it away into our long-term memory. So it's kind of using a bit of brain power. And also I don't usually actually link my thumbs, I just cross my hands over my chest, but just doing it feels quite nice and quite soothing. So it's something that I'll do, like you were saying, when we were in brain gym, like an emotion comes up, I'll take a bit of a breather, close my eyes, do a bit of tapping and just notice that emotion and just allow myself to feel it and release it. What can sometimes also happen with this is that it can bring things bubbling up to the surface that might be kind of hiding a little bit like beneath our level of awareness. So I always say to people, like, if you're going to use the butterfly hug, make sure you've got a few minutes, or make sure you've got a period of time to be able to decompress afterwards, like if things do bubble up to the surface, or use some other kind of breathing, grounding technique, like going out for a walk, moving your attention somewhere else if you notice like it's emotions that need to be released and you haven't got the capacity to do it at that point. Yes, so yeah, it's one of my favorite like quick, easy tools for people to use.
I like this because, like, Sanya, I have ADHD, and there's just doing it right now. I was hearing you talk. It helped me to listen that little bit better. I'm definitely going to teach my kids this before they like start fighting with each other. Be like, how do you go in the corner and tap?
I do. Honestly, my kids get really annoyed with me because I'm like, let's just do a butterfly hug. Let's just do some breathing and a butterfly hug. And they're like, oh, just shut up. I don't want to hear that. Yes.
It's all the things are like
My
popping
kids
through.
are over it.
I love that. And Sanya, what's your go-to kind of self-soothing remedy to take yourself from like a 10 to a 2? There we go. Apologies for that. It's all just happening when all the things are all connected. But yeah, your self-soothing remedy.
Well, when it's not interrupted by the exact same sound you just had happen, for me, a lot of that is, I mean, I have enough VR headsets in my house, and like we're always tinkering away, so that really helps. You know, coming home from a long day of talking to people about every angle of the business and trying to sell it and do all the other things you have to do, having a headset and putting it on for 20 minutes and going through one of our programs really helps. So, but one thing I haven't been doing is integrating this butterfly hug with while I'm doing it. So I'm going to definitely try that. Thank you. I have not made that connection before. That helps. I have 2 very cute dogs. They bring me a lot of joy. That helps. And also I think like having conversations like this, having founders in my community who understand, and I had a really wonderful conversation with 2 female founders yesterday, and 2 things that what was said, and I thought were really meaningful. Like to share. I don't want your high performing self. I just want you as you are. And I think that's something I want to be able to convey very clearly to the founders I interact with, you know, in these sort of spaces. That's one. Second is that you don't always have to be the person who ups the energy to be high performing and to entertain, inspire, engage with people. It's okay. Like every level of energy is valuable and brings a lot of, like, you can still have exchanges, and it's not that you're not, you know. And I like to call it like being a vegetable. So sometimes I will just say to people, like, can we vegetable together? Which is mostly just sitting and staring at a wall and just talking about nothing. And those things help, you know?
I love that.
Right. Can we vegetable together? I feel like I'm gonna have
love
like a
it.
bi-weekly like veg. I'm gonna call it the veg patch.
Could we
Come
do
to
like
inspiration
co-work?
space. If you
Yeah.
great.
Co-working vegetation.
Come into the veg patch. Just sit.
Love it.
Just like vibe. Oh, well, thank you both so much for taking some time out of your very busy days to share some knowledge with me and for people who are watching live, watching replay. To Sanya's point, I think it is really important that we have these conversations to normalize what the experience of entrepreneurship feels like. No, it's not different to, you know, having a traditional job, and at the same time it's incredibly different because you are making from nothing, and it can feel like it's all on you and that the stakes are really high. And a lot of us get into this because we are being driven by our egos, right? We want to see something, we want the world to change, and we are like, damn it, I'll do it, it is me, I volunteer as tribute. And that comes with, you know, pride, and with pride comes shame. And if we don't have spaces to really unpack that, I know for me, I've held on to some stuff for so long that it impedes my personal relationships, my health, and, you know, that's no good to anyone. I'm pretty sure, you know, people's last words on their on their deathbeds is not, I wish I made one more reel. So, you know, it's something to really really think about. So where will our lovely audience find you and keep in touch with your stories? I know you guys are collaborating, we're collaborating, we've all, you know, doing all the things, but as individuals, where will we find you? How can we stay in touch?
Yeah, well, so my website's hello@maisienichols.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Maisie Nichols, and I love TikTok as well. I'm always on TikTok. So yeah, come and hang out with me on TikTok, please, because no one else I know, hardly anyone I know uses it.
I often go on there and I share your stuff on Instagram, but the only thing
you.
I watch on TikTok is this one lady who grooms her dog because it's a little bit like ASMR.
Oh yes,
and I don't have a dog. So I go there for your videos to go reshare them and her dog grooming. Otherwise, I got to get out of there. It's very loud.
It's overstimulating, isn't it? It is.
And Sanya.
Sanya Rajpal on LinkedIn, LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm not on TikTok or Twitter. But yeah, just find me, message me, I'm around. And AdagioVR, again, LinkedIn, Instagram, the same. Yeah, I think we're all gonna, the three of us, be showing up a lot more together, and Maisie and I are gonna be doing some really exciting things. So I think this is the beginning of a wonderful adventure.
Yay, it's exciting.
Or rather, as I say, we've spent a few months now moving like the G's in lasagna. So now we're just taking this to the public. And that's the best thing, you know? I've been your host, Leona Fricker, founder of Inspiration Space. And if you have an idea and you don't know what to do next, if you want to pivot your business, if you're looking to work on your mental fitness, you'll find us on LinkedIn at the Inspiration Space. You'll find me there too, Leona Fricker. You'll find us on Instagram, and you'll find me personally on Instagram. And I do lots of chatting. I love to have a chat. Yes. So until the next time, thank you, everyone.